6 minutes past the hour, 6 minutes past 3 on Your Women Radio WFM 91.7, Nigeria's only radio station for women and their families. Welcome to Women Voices for Peace. My name is Somto Titilayo Ajama. Today we're discussing From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism Campaign. From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism Campaign. Now, according to a study commissioned by Nigeria's Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development and the United Nations Population Fund, Nigeria has long been facing a gender-based violence crisis, with 30% of women and girls aged 15 to 49 having experienced sexual abuse. Gender-based violence, GBV, is the most pervasive yet least visible human rights violation in the world. It includes physical, sexual, mental, or economic harm inflicted on a person because of socially ascribed power imbalances between males and females. Hence, the reason we're having this conversation today, From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism Campaign. My first guest today is Betty Aber, founder, CEE Hope Nigeria. Good afternoon, Betty.
Good afternoon. We are C Hope Nigeria. C Hope as in the Hope.
C Hope Nigeria. Oh, interesting. That's a very good name. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. So, Betty, we're discussing From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism Campaign. So, tell me why it's important. I already know, but I need every other person listening, everyone listening right now, to understand why it's important to focus on gender-based violence against women and girls. So share with me why, in your thoughts, it's important for people to focus on gender-based violence against women and girls.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And to answer your question straight away, it's important to focus on gender-based violence directed. Yes, can you hear me?
Of course, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so it's very important to focus on gender-based violence directed against women and girls, and even to make it a global conversation, because it's common knowledge that globally, women and girls are at the receiving end of societal norms, attitudes, and practices that are violent in nature, not just in Nigeria, but throughout the world. There's a trending news right now on CNN of parents selling off their girls children in Afghanistan in order to survive. And this is not because they do not have male children, but that because they believe that women are expendable. They are expendable products. That they are not, when you talk about priority, they are not on the top of their priorities. They are people that can, as far as they're concerned, can easily be, you just do away with them. Anytime you think they are not valuable enough, or when you have to make a choice. My organization works in marginalized communities, work with young persons in marginalized communities. And we've discovered that when a community like Makoko, Lagos, Bariga, when you talk about those communities being marginalized by government, being forgotten by the rest of the society, there are also other levels of marginalization with marginalization within those communities. Women and girls are oppressed. Many of them suffer all kinds of gender-based violence like rape in these very communities that we say are marginalized by government. So you have marginalization within marginalization. In our family, most of the time, girls are not prioritized. The needs of girls are not prioritized. The future of girls are not prioritized. So it's the more reason why we have to focus on to really make it a global campaign every single year. And we're not even doing enough, considering the fact that the rate of rape especially is on the increase. We have to even shout more and more, because gender-based violence directed at women and girls are on the increase.
That is true. That is very true. Thank you for shedding light on why it's important to focus on gender-based violence. So today, because we're talking about From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism campaign, can you share with us on what exactly the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is? Because some people listening might not fully understand the meaning of these 16 days of activism. So explain to us what 16 days of activism against gender-based violence means.
Okay, so every year in the activism world, throughout the world, globally, there are activities, awareness creation activities, all kinds of events, ceremonies, to draw attention of the world to fight, for us to have like a united world to fight against gender-based violence. And this starts basically from 25th of November to 10th of December every year. 10th of December every year is Human Rights Day. And so it just climaxes on that day with a lot of celebration globally. And like I said earlier, gender-based violence is not just a Nigerian problem, it's a global problem. And cultures across the world, there's a lot of discrimination against women. Even in the United States, the U.S., as enlightened as it is, as advanced as its democracy is, has not been able to produce a female president to show you the kind of nuances, the kind of attitude that are anti-woman, anti the female gender. So, and so these activities are to draw attention to these realities, that these practices that do not favor women and girls. And when you talk about female genital mutilation, for instance, it's a major issue, and most cultures, most communities in Nigeria practice it. And you can imagine the impact on women and girls for the years, how the sexuality of women especially, are stifled because of the culture. A God-given sexuality is stifled because of culture. So it is violent. It is violent in a way. And female genital mutilation is usually one of the things, one of the issues that is that one of the burning issues that's discussed every single year. And the fact that it's ongoing is the more reason why we have to continue
to talk about it.
Many people are now ready to take action against rape. When rape happens in a place before now, both the family members and everyone around tries to kill that story. But now with social media, we are having more and more reports of cases. So you can see that these activities, this awareness creation every single year, this sensitization, this consciousness building, it's having an impact on our society. I believe that we'll get to a point that gender-based violence will reduce to its minimum, its barest minimum, because of a wide consciousness on this kind of issues. And then women and girls will be safer.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you very much. In case you're just joining us, this is Women Voices for Peace on your Women Radio WFM 91.7. We're discussing today Awareness to Action, From Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism campaign. I'm discussing currently with Betty Abba, founder, See Hope Nigeria. So if you are interested in the scope of this conversation and you want to contribute in one way or another, you can dial into the station using the number 07000 917 917, or you can send a text or a WhatsApp message to 0703 175 6537. Once again, the phone line is 07000 917 917, and the text line where you can send a text message or a WhatsApp message to is 0703 175 6537. Now, coming back to you, Betty. Who gets to participate in the 16 days activism campaign?
Okay, I think it's every single person under the earth is a stakeholder and has a responsibility to end gender-based violence. So it's everyone should be involved. And thankfully, we are getting more and more stakeholders involved across the world. The mother, the father, the teacher, policymakers, members of law enforcement agencies. Every single person should be involved in raising awareness because, like we always say, we are neighbor keepers. And then one thing I keep talking about every single time I've had opportunity to address community issues. When we talk about rape, don't say this cannot happen to me. Don't see it as a distant thing. If you don't take the right steps, if you don't create the right awareness, if you don't coach your girls, especially because girls are the main target of rape when we talk about sexual assault, because of their natural vulnerability. So if you don't take this action to protect the young people around you or women around you, this is something that will happen to you, to your child, will happen to your sister's child, your neighbor's child, will happen to your brother's child. And I mean, even you as a woman, even males are also raped. So it's something that we should take every single person should take awareness station about rape as a personal responsibility. They need to report to police. They need to take the survivors to the right sexual assault response center. They need to expose the rapists and ensure that justice is served. Because when someone rapes and you say no, we went for a meeting in Bariga just last Saturday, and someone said, I think these rapists, what they need is counseling. We should make our time to counsel them. I think they will change. Because some of them are psychological. I said, and my straight answer to her was, why would you be more concerned about someone who damages a little girl than the safety, than the response to that girl? You should be more concerned about the victim of that person's action than to administer counseling to the person who is clearly out to damage another human being. So we need to have that kind of conversation. And thankfully, the 16 days of activism provides that kind of platform where people are able to have all kinds of conversation. Like last year, I ran a series of podcasts on domestic violence, which has tripled, which has really spiked as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the topics we treated was spousal rape. The fact that a husband can rape his wife, the fact that a wife can forcefully have sex with a husband, can compel him to have sex with her when he's not ready for that. These are conversations that we really need to have. Why should people's sexual choices, why should people's preferences, why should people be forced? Why would you assault your wife and make sure you have sex with her whether she's in a mood or not? These are things that really we have to bring to the table. And I think that when we have that kind of conversation, when people are open, we have a much more progressive society.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Betty. Okay. All right. So at this point, you need to expatiate a little bit more about what gender-based violence is for the benefit of our listener. We talked about, I asked you earlier why it's important to focus on gender-based violence. Now, some people listening may not understand the extent to which gender-based violence goes and what it is specifically. So tell me in your own words now what gender-based violence is and three major types of gender-based violence, just for more context.
Okay, from my research, I think there are about 5 to 6 types of gender-based violence. In order to put it more broadly, rape, of course, is at the top of gender-based violence. Rape, and then sexual assault. Sexual assault is when you try to forcefully rape someone, you might not have succeeded, or you've assaulted the person. There could be physical assault, there could be forced marriage, there could be denial of resources or opportunities or services based on that person's gender or sex. Then there could be psychological or emotional abuse. And why we call it gender-based violence is because you do this because of the sex or the gender of that person. Like when you rape a girl, it's because she is a girl, she's female, and she's naturally fragile. So you use your position as a man or a young man or a boy with more power, more physical strength to suppress, to subdue, and sexually, forcefully have sex with her or have carnal knowledge of her. So you are utilizing your position as a stronger gender. So then maybe you are a wife, you are a man, you beat your wife every single day at the slightest opportunity. That's your only way of talking to her. That's your only way of correcting her. Obviously, because you grew in a culture where beating is a norm. It's like a normal thing. And you're surprised that other men are not beating their wives. So you're using your position as a husband, as a man, to assault your wife because she's the weaker sex. And when you talk about even the people having sexually molesting or harassing their female students because they are male and they are in a position of authority as a lecturer, they can manipulate their results. They can, deal with her, so to say, if she refuses. So when you utilize your position of superiority based on your sex or your gender to assault, to damage or to negatively impact the life of the person next to you because he or she is in a vulnerable position. That is gender-based violence.
Interesting. That's very true. That's very true. So you've mentioned rape, you mentioned sexual assault, and you also mentioned what was the third one again?
The physical assault.
Yes, physical assault.
Yes.
Yes, forced marriage. So all these
emotional abuse.
Thank you very much. All these forms of gender-based violence are very prevalent in our society, and it ranges in gravity from different person. People that have been victims of this, sometimes you look at them and it's not as severe as some of the people who have been through this. So talk to me about how we can help survivors of gender-based violence in our communities. How can we help survivors of gender-based violence in our communities?
Yes, I think the first thing is for us to end a culture of rape. When rape becomes a culture, when someone is raped, it doesn't surprise the next person. And the priority of the person, even sometimes the law enforcement agencies, is to kill that particular occurrence, to kill that incident, to ensure that nobody speaks out. We will have to deal with rape culture in Nigeria. And then we will have to encourage people by dealing. One of the ways we deal with rape culture, we do away with rape culture, is to encourage people to speak. We've had incidences where a girl is raped, and the priority of the parents is to make sure the case is closed, so that it doesn't. Her reputation as a marriage material is not tampered with. And nobody talks about ensuring emergency services for her, to ensure that she's free of sexually transmitted diseases, to ensure that she doesn't take in. It's a young girl, a teenager. The priority of the parent is to make sure nobody talks about it. The priority of the rapist and his or her own people is to make sure he goes scot-free. The priority of the law enforcement agencies is to make sure they get as much money as possible from the rapist camp.
So nobody's looking out for the survivor. Nobody's looking out for the victim.
So we have to really encourage people to speak out. We have to acquaint ourselves with the necessary agencies that cases like this can be reported to. First of all, to ensure medical services for the survivor, and to ensure that the law takes its course, that the person is brought to book, that justice takes its course, that the person is brought to justice.
Thank you so much.
If it's not done, he goes on another rampage and rapes as many girls as possible. A single person will have a record of raping 10, 20 girls in a neighborhood. And this goes on from the very first case because no action was taken.
Exactly.
We were in Mexico 2 weeks ago, and one of the chiefs said something that really rings a bell, that really comes out very strong. He said, when someone rapes a girl, the parents of the rapist should stop coming to beg him. He's a local chief, he's a valet. They should stop going to beg on his behalf. Let him go to jail. Let him be dealt with. He will not die inside the jail. He will learn his lesson. And then others will also learn lessons. That he will come out and he will not die. But they should stop encouraging rape by begging on behalf of the rapist. So when a society has that consciousness that we must stop this by punishing offenders, we must stop it by encouraging people who are victims to speak up, we must take a resolute stand to ensure justice. That is when you see drastic reduction of cases, because the rapist knows that no one is going to take sides with him, not even his own family. And that's when you actually see a reduction. Well, we just produced a short movie based on a rape case we dealt with a few years, 7 years ago in a community, Agbado in Ogun State, where a teenager was strangled by 4 boys. And the priority of the police is to collect money from the parents of the boys and kill the case. And when the father of the girl would not accept it, he was beaten up by the police and detained. That was completely outrageous as far as I was concerned.
Definitely. That is a very disturbing story.
Yes, it is. We just shot a short movie, like a docudrama. We dramatized it. We went to the community, dramatized it, and it came out to coincide with the International Day of the Girl. That happened.
Amazing.
And this is even very close to Lagos. And we were informed. That was how we got to know. So imagine what happens in more
remote communities.
Remote communities. And we came in, and the boys were rearrested and detained, and the case, and they were prosecuted. And the police officers involved were dealt with. But and that was because the valet of the place refused and said, justice must be done in this case. Because this man is a poor bricklayer, does not mean he and his daughter should suffer, should be victimized. It's the boys and their parents that should be shamed. And that was how he invited us into the case, and he ensured every step of the way that the law takes its course. This happens every single day across the country because impunity is growing, and our law enforcement agencies are not helping matters. When we are able to sanitize the Nigerian police, especially, when we are able to sensitize people to know what is right, to know the right places to go, to know the right action to take, I think gender-based violence will be drastically reduced.
Thank you very much, Betty. So finally, before I let you go, talk to me about what it takes to move from awareness to action of the campaign, of the 16 days of activism campaign. What does it take to move from awareness to action? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about gender-based violence in the context of the 16 days of activism campaign, from awareness to action. So what does it take to move from awareness to action of this campaign?
Yes, thank you so much. It's just personal determination. But like I said earlier, anyone could be a victim. It's outrageous to put it this way, for people to think that it cannot happen to me. It's their problem. People in very poor communities are raped. People in very posh neighborhoods, elitist neighborhoods, have their children raped. So right now, as it stands in Nigeria, no child is absolutely free. No child is absolutely safe. And we all have to see it as our personal responsibility to safeguard every single child around us. We've dealt with a case of the rape of a boy, a boy, like a preteen, about 7 years, who had been subject to sodomy for about 5 years from a very young age. And the father got to know just after about 5 years. So even not just teenage children, not just girls, even boys.
Even boys.
So child is actually safe around us. And we should take it as our personal responsibility to be the safeguard for the child, to be the protector of children around us, and to ensure that each time this thing, because we cannot guarantee that there will not be rape for the next 100 years. Absolutely no rape. People will continue to run foul of the law. But when we deal with a case, with a culprit, with a perpetrator in a way that the law demands, others will take to their heels. Others will behave themselves. But when we have the law enforcement agencies lining up behind the rapist and his or her parents because they have the money, they can dictate the tune and all of that, then we're going to continue to have this crisis. And then this damages the lives of so many young people, especially girls. So we have to see ourselves as having the responsibility to change the dynamics. We have to have the responsibility to ensure that children around us are safe, by taking it up, by reporting to the police, by reporting to NGOs. You can even do it anonymously. You may not need to come out if you feel that your life is at risk.
True.
And then you have to enlighten children around you. When you have this kind of person, having this kind of tendencies around you, report to your auntie, report to your teachers, report to your parents, report to the nearest adult around you, so that the person is stopped in his or her evil track.
So basically,
we have to sensitize the young people that are mostly the victims, and then we have to ensure that we report to the relevant authorities and ensure that we follow up and that justice is served every single time.
Thank you so much, Betty. Thank you for joining us today on Women Voices for Peace. It's been a pleasure having you on board.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes. Bye.
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 Women Voices for Peace on Your Women Radio, WFM 91.7. Okay. At this point, there's so much to talk about when it comes to gender-based violence and when it comes to how to go from awareness to action in view of the 16 Days of Activism campaign. And then this is very important because according to Betty, founder See Hope Nigeria, it's important that young girls be safe in their communities. It's important that even young boys be safe in their communities. And the law has a strong role to play in this, and has a long way to go when it comes to enforcing justice on the criminals in perpetrators of gender-based violence. My second guest today is Chioma Odara Ikegunam Ude Esquire. She's a legal practitioner, head of department Access to Justice, Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Center, Abakaliki, Ebonyi State, and member Young Women of Peace. Good afternoon, Chioma.
Good afternoon, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. How are you feeling today?
I'm very fine, thank God.
It's a privilege having you. Thank you very much for joining us on Women Voices for Peace. Okay, so my previous guest, Betty spoke to me about the various forms of gender-based violence. She talked about forced marriage, she talked about rape, she talked about physical and sexual assault. And given all these types of gender-based violence, I am interested in what you think and how we can fight gender-based violence affecting children and youths on the move. Because a lot of people are parading our societies, for different reasons, career, for just family, different reasons. Women, children, youths, even men. Everybody is everywhere. But how can we fight gender-based violence, particularly in reference to women and girls, affecting children and youths on the move?
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. We have so many ways of actually trying to eliminate sexual-based violence, especially on women and girls. One of the ways is to punish the perpetrators by prosecution. We have different laws. We have the BAP law, we have the Child Law, the Child Act, which also provides punishment for the perpetrators. So once we get reports, or once we have reports of such offenses, of such acts, and what needs to be done is, one, to get the perpetrator arrested. Once this perpetrator is arrested and the punishment which is speculated out for such offense, for such crime, is being given to the person, and he comes out from wherever or whatever punishment is given to him, it's going to serve. It's going to serve others. It's going to serve as punishment. It's going to serve as an example to others that such crime is not admissible or is not allowed. Because one of the things that I found out in our community is that this crime is being covered. Most of the survivors cover this crime. They don't want to report them because they think or they know it's their spouse. Most of them are their spouse. Most of them are their family members, so they do not want to report this crime. Most of the survivors, their parents do not want this punishment to come out because they think it's going to affect the life of their child. So they don't want this crime to be known, so they cover it up. And once you cover it up, you help the perpetrator to go around being free from that offense. And when he's not punished, when the law does not take its course, it will still go on happening on daily basis.
You're very right about that.
Yes. I'll give for example. I know of a lady whom has lived with the husband for so many years, and for more than 9 years, and on every occasion, the husband violates her. The husband violates her, beats her on several occasions. But because she does not want to report, but because she knows that this man, the perpetrator, is the husband, she doesn't want she doesn't want people to hear about it. She doesn't want the friends to laugh at her. She doesn't want family to hear or to preach about it and tell her, stay in this marriage is for better, for worse. And what happened? She's dead. Because of what? Because of this same violence. So it's not something that is advised for us to cover up. The person has to face the punishment. The person has to face what he or she has committed.
So for you, would you say the easiest way or the best way, the most effective way to fight gender-based violence would be to enforce justice on the perpetrators?
Yes. Yes. I would say that is the best way, and I have reasons. Like I just said earlier.
Yes, the story you just mentioned.
Sorry?
The story you just talked about.
Yes. And when this perpetrator is allowed, I have another example. I know of a man. They just brought the story. They brought the case to my office. Raped the maid, which is a young girl of 12 years. And because the wife thinks or knows better to her that if I report this case, my husband, it will end my marriage, and it will spoil my name, and it will spoil the name of my family, my husband. She goes about hiding this thing. One, you've not solved any problem. Because tomorrow, and what she did in that particular case was to send this child back to her parents.
After this incident?
Yes, because she wants to cover this crime. What she did was to caution the husband and send this child back home. And believe you me, sending this child back home does not solve any problem.
Yes.
It would increase it. It will increase the offense. The offense of it. It will even increase and give your husband more reasons to do whatever he's doing, knowing fully whether if he comes up, he's also
defend him.
Away. Exactly. So the best way to do it is to implement. Let the person face the law. Let the person be persecuted properly.
That is true. That is very true. It is most definitely an effective way to get rid of the scourge of gender-based violence in our society. So, given the story you mentioned, you talked about the woman whose husband was violating her physically. You also talked about this young girl now who was a victim of this man that she used to work for. So these people are survivors. Okay, no, the woman didn't survive, sadly, and that is so sad. But this particular girl in question, she's a survivor of gender-based violence, but she has not been properly taken through any process of healing, any process of rehabilitation. Exactly. So how can we help this sort of survivors? How can we help this kind of people who have survived gender-based violence in our society?
Okay, one of the ways to help the survivors, from my line of experience, I know one of the good ways to help them is to provide shelter. Why do I say providing of shelter? Because most times, the survivors, they do not want to go back to where they are coming from. But because we do not have a
facility,
a place, a comfortable place for the person to live in, we see ourselves ending up taking them back to where the act was committed, rather talking to the parties or probably getting the party, the perpetrator himself or something, and telling the child that this thing should not happen again. But it is not that in that way you've not solved anything, because the perpetrator will still come back to the house. The girl is still seeing the perpetrator. The girl is still looking at him, and it will remind her of what has happened to her. In that way, you've not solved them at all. So one of the ways I think, or which is needed, is like in my own state. I know that we lack shelter for the survivors, which is very, very, very important in this work we do. Shelter for the survival is important. Having to provide, we go on regular sensitization, regular monitoring, follow up, keep up on the survival. Don't just bring this person out, let the case be done, and you forget the person. You do a follow up, because this person physically, the person has been abused, the person has been violated. You don't know what is wrong with her, what her brain has been structured to become because of this abuse. You don't know what her brain has been structured to become because of this violence on her. So regular checkup, meeting up with her, allowing her to socialize, because most times you see the survivors, they distance themselves from people because of that particular abuse. They don't want to talk to people, they don't want to socialize with people, they don't want to see the male folks because of what has happened to them in the past. So if you do a regular checkup, a regular routine, a regular follow-up on the survivors, it would go in a very good way of helping them and seeing that they are restored back to base.
So that's shelter and proper psychological follow-up to make sure that they're restored back to their stable state of mind. Okay, thank you very much for that, Chama.
Thank you.
It's also important that we talk more about what it takes to move from awareness to action in view of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So we've talked about letting people know how much it's important to speak up against gender-based violence. But what would it take, or what does it take to move from the stage of awareness to the stage of action in view of this campaign?
Okay. Like you just said, that's one of the things I think is very important, moving from awareness to action. Letting people speak up, boldness. Most times, when we do awareness, we make both the survivors and the perpetrators know about this, and that is a crime, and I have a punishment stipulated out for such offense. But moving from awareness to action, you are able, from your awareness, you are able to make people understand, the survivors understand that you have rights. And if you speak up, those things that have been done to you would somehow, the punishment, or the perpetrator would serve the punishment for the offense he has committed. So most times I used to tell people, if you don't tell me what is wrong with you, I would not be able to know. So if we do this, our awareness to action, people will be able, being brave and willingness. You're brave to report this matter. You're brave to follow up this matter. Some report this matter, and along the line, they leave. Some report the matter, and when it is time for investigation, even us trying to help these survivors on the same trying to help the survivors in our own side, we try to break it, because we think, or probably found out, that the perpetrators are somehow related to us. Like I told a colleague of mine, if the perpetrator is related to you, pass this case to someone else. And just don't allow this case to die off because you think the perpetrator is related to you. It doesn't work like that. So being bold, being brave, being willing, having the willing. When I talk about willingness, I'm talking about the survivor here.
Yes.
If you're not willing to pursue your matter, if you're not willing to give us the full details of what happened, we would not also be able to help. Because with your facts, with your stories, we'll follow up the case. And then having this intelligence of doing this work. I'm talking about us and the police and the security agents at large. Because most times you get this case, and because I use my side as, for example, every day, because we do indigent people, we do their cases, pro bono cases, that's what we do.
Okay.
So most times you get the police for them to investigate this matter and transmit the records to the DPP. And because you're not buoyant enough to mobilize them, they kind of jeopardize with your case. You're not taking action. And getting to that judicial system, that side, that DPP, when you transmit the records, because they think what the money I give you, the money I'm giving to you to pursue my matter is not actually what they want. They will end up dropping your case. And without the action, there is no need for the awareness.
Without the action, there's no need for the awareness.
There is no need for it. It's the action that reduces the crime.
Yes, the action is the end. That's the end that we are all looking towards.
Yes. Which is why I just said that prosecuting the culprit in this matter is one of the most important ways to eliminate this act.
Thank you, Chama.
Once you prosecute 2, 3, 4.
Everyone will learn their lesson.
Exactly. Thank God for our social media. It goes viral. The jingles, they carry it. And once they carry it, people around will hear the message. People around will hear the message. Even nowadays, it's not even the urban villages, the villages that carry out this crime. You find out that the intelligent ones as well, educated ones, learned ones as well, carry out this violence against women and girls.
So, leads me to my next question. What can human rights organizations do during this campaign to bring more awareness and action towards gender-based violence? Because we understand that this is a violation of human rights.
Yes.
For anybody who has been a survivor of gender-based violence, this is a pure criminal violation of human rights. So what are these organizations, what are human rights organizations doing during this 16 days of activism campaign to bring more awareness and action towards gender-based violence?
Okay, the human rights is, I know that during these 16 days of activism, they go about doing their advocacy, sensitization. We do road walk, we do radio program, we do jingles, we publish stories, our success stories. We publish our success stories, excluding the names of the survivors and predators, but we publish stories of our success stories. We publish them. We do advocacy visits to the DPP, to the police, security agents, judiciary. Virtually everybody gets to know about the violation of gender-based violation. So everybody knows about it. Everybody, we go about also, when we go to school, we talk to children. We'll give children our flyers, offices to report, we leave our numbers. And once cases come to us, we do not stop but to see that the perpetrators are put to book. We do not stop. So human rights, within these 16 days, will still go about doing advocacy visits, doing sensitization in schools, in churches, in villages, in marketplaces, to let them know. Not just knowing the proper office to report. Like I know of a case that a lady came to me and said she reported though, but when she reported, the organization took her to that particular to the particular place where this incident was being done, and they shouted at them and they came back. And I said, that is not the end of it. You ask another person question. And that was how the story came to the office. So knowing the particular place to report your matter. When you report a matter and the matter is not documented, it's not reported anywhere. When you go to any organization and you report a matter and that matter is not properly documented, you've not made any reports. A matter should be properly documented, because when it's documented, you have a follow-up. Results comes out. Action follows. So during these 16 days, human rights has a lot to do. Educating people, telling people of their rights, because most of us, honestly speaking, if I used to use where I work as example, I know people that come and say that men beating women is normal, it's traditionally right, it's their culture. So most people, they don't know it's a crime. They don't know they have a right. So most people believe it's their right. It's the right of men to freely beat their partner or to freely beat women and girls or to freely violate them, to abuse them. It's their right. I think I had a story where they brought a young girl, two guys brought a young girl. The first person, after using the young girl, the second person has to follow up again. And I asked myself, and you think it's normal? And the guy said, it's normal. My friend finished and I went in. So to them, it's a normal, it's a cultural, the traditional culture that they do. So some of them do not know it's wrong. So we go about educating people, sensitizing students from the nursery, churches, in the marketplace, a lot, road. We do flyers, we do billboards everywhere for them to know about it.
Thank you so much, Shama. Thank you for telling us. Thank you for telling us what human rights organizations can do. Thank you for just talking to us about how well we can work together to decrease significantly the rate of gender-based violence in our society. So I just want to get your final words now. Your final words regarding this subject today. Today, from Awareness to Action, 16 Days of Activism campaign. What are your final words before I let you go?
Okay, first, I would like to say that during these 16 days of activism, it's not just what a particular body does. It is what we all do because we want our freedom. We want what is right. We want what is obtainable. It is not just one thing it is not something that I can do on my own. I cannot on my own do these things if people do not come out to help me. If people do not speak up. If you don't talk, like I always say whenever I go for a program, you don't just report when it's something affecting your home. You report when your neighbors are being affected.
That's true.
When your neighbor is being affected, you are affected. When your community is affected, you are affected. So you don't report because it's not happening. You don't report because it's not something that is happening to it's not your mother, it's not your father, it's not your sister, it's not your child. No. Because when your community is affected, you are affected. So let us work in unity. Let us work together, knowing that gender-based violence is a crime and is a serious crime, and that most people, victims, has died in cause of this action. I can give thousands of stories, thousands of cases, recent cases where women and girls have lost their life just because of this offense. So let us all know that it's a crime, not when it's affecting it becomes a crime, but when it's affecting your neighbor is a crime. When it's affecting your church member is a crime. When it's affecting a child in your school is a crime. Even the teacher should also know that these things are crime. And you don't a crime that you cover, and you think you covered it. It didn't just end there. You are building up nations of crime. You're building up nations of survivors. And these survivors, they don't just go back. You don't just do it and they go back and they forget it. Next year, you still have... I have a particular case I'm doing. This woman, the husband, slept with her when she was sleeping. That is
slept with her when she was asleep.
Yes, when she was asleep, yes. The husband slept with her when she was asleep. And when I heard that, to me, I said, he's your husband now. But this particular thing I've just told you now, that thing happened in 2014. But now in 2021, it's still affecting the marriage. When I asked the woman, she said the only thing that is paining her is that her husband used her when she was sleeping. And when she woke up and asked the husband said, "Are you not my wife?" And to us, we think is he not your husband? But to the woman,
she has been violated.
You violated her rights, and it is paining her much more than we can imagine. And because of that singular act, a lot of things have been happening in our family because of that singular act, which even the husband does not know about. So it's these things are crimes that grow up. Even the survivors, they grow up, and when you ask them things, they get irritated when they see men, not because they want to get irritated, but because of what has happened to them. They talk ill at men, they talk ill at their father, even as priests. It's not because of they want to speak ill at them. It is because of what has transpired, what they've gone through, what they've been through. That is what is keeping them like that. So if we speak up, we help to solve a lot of problems. A lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chioma. It's been great having you on Women Voices for Peace this afternoon.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you. I enjoyed the program, and I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
GBV, gender-based violence, disproportionately affects women and girls. And in situations of displacement, their risk of exposure increases. This is in line with what Betty had said earlier, as well as Chioma saying later, just now in our rounded off conversation. It's important that we understand that gender-based violence is a real thing. It's a reality in today's society. And the best way to eliminate this is to ensure justice for perpetrators of gender-based violence. We should also be committed to continuously strengthening coordination and programming to protect women and girls from gender-based violence. We should also advocate for adequate resources to increase the implementation of quality specialized programs for women and girls. Women Voices for Peace is sponsored by WANEP, West African Network for Peace Building, with support from the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, NORAD, and Women in Peace Building Network, WIPNET. Women Voices for Peace holds every Tuesday on Women Radio by 3 p.m. And in this respect, I want to say thank you to my guest, Betty Abba, founder, See Hope Nigeria, Chioma Odara Ikebunam Ude, Esquire, a legal practitioner, head of Department Access to Justice, Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Center, Abakaliki, and member, Young Women of Peace. Thank you again to the engineer on duty and production crew of Taiwo Adeleye, Dabira Oluwagbile, and Victoria Owaifo. Join me again next week here on Women Radio 91.7. My name is Tumtwe Titilayo Ajamma. Good afternoon.